Just there, we're gonna need to check that out. All right, let's
Yes, we should start.
get moving. Gonna get started here at 7:05. I'm very happy to see an audience, even though the budget is not on the agenda this evening. Thank you, everybody who voted. Adjustments to the agenda.
I just need to have you relabel 6.2, which should really read professional development calendar.
Yep. Huge shape.
Huge.
Audience and communication, and this is for you all, for stuff that's not on the agenda. If you want to speak your mind, now is the time. Anybody?
Wait, I wasn't paying attention, sorry.
Well, it was directed directly at you.
And before we go on to audience communication, though,
Yes.
we're not adding an agenda item for another hire? That'll be at the next meeting? Okay. Just want to make sure. Thank you.
Are we allowed to ask, was there a recount on the budget?
Was there, I'm going outside my legal comfort zone, but you're allowed to request a recount for a specific number of days after the count, so
Okay.
10 days.
So as far as you
Thank
know,
you.
it hasn't?
As far as I know, it hasn't, but I don't know.
Okay.
So it could happen. So no, it hasn't happened, but.
But the chances of it being a different outcome with a single issue, it's one little piece
Right.
of paper, it'd be hard to imagine that there would be a different outcome no matter what,
Thank you.
thankfully.
Okay. Presentations this evening. We are having a presentation on personal learning plans.
I'll do the link.
This evening, Kathy Betty, our middle level school counselor, and myself are going to talk a little bit about personalized learning plans, which we refer to as PLPs. And the core ideas this evening that we'll be talking about is the law, Act 277, and the critical components of a PLP. We'll talk about what our implementation is going to look like, as well as the platform that we're using to house our PLPs, which is called Naviance.
So, just to start with a teeny bit of background, our PLP committee at Charlotte Central School is comprised of Audrey, me, Ed Bianchi, who's our tech integrationist, and Matt Lutz, who's a 7th, 8th grade teacher. What we're going to be talking about today is one teeny component of what you saw in the common topics at the CVU board meeting, which is proficiency-based learning and really personalizing learning for all students. In that effort to personalize learning, we need a tool or a guide to make sure that we are keeping track of a student's interests, goals, and progress. And that's where the PLP comes in. So there's critical elements of a PLP that have been set forth by the AOE, and that's through Act 77 that was passed. And you got an overview in the last meeting. If anybody's interested in getting more information about the critical elements of a PLP, you can come here. It's right off of the education.vermont.gov. Basically, the core elements are that there will be a place for students to look at their own principles and values, that they can think about the reciprocal relationship with community, that it's going to be incorporated with good citizenship. They can explore their own interests, they have academic and personal goals, and that they can show evidence or showcase their work. We are really careful about making sure that the plans and all the sending schools that are going to CVU are going to look similar enough that there's a thread of continuity, so that when they're interpreted by the high school, the high school can just keep going with them, they can keep running, the ball can keep rolling. These plans are developed in 7th grade, as of right now, but more grades will get added to that, and they will go follow a student through to the high school. So I brought a draft that the school counselors, or the middle level school counselors, and the CVU counselors, or a couple representatives from their group, have been working on. And I did clear it with Mark. I would like to pass this around, but I didn't put it in the packet because it's very much a draft. It's nothing a big consequence right now, but I want you to know that we're thinking about how this is going to look. Basically, how this draft looks is we took the critical elements that were stated in Act 77, we discussed what tasks or activities are going to prove that a student has, that the plan incorporates that critical element, and then we give a timeline of when those critical elements will be addressed. We have it from 7th grade, and then the critical elements for the 8th grade, all the way up to 12th grade. So the words on this document don't really matter, but I have 3 copies I can either pass around or just leave here if people want to take a closer look of just sort of where we're headed, what's our direction, and what's the work that's already gone into this. So that being said, of looking for that common thread that's all going to move forward to CDU, each CSSU school has to have a very individualized way based on our population, our resources, our time and schedule to actually implement the PLP. So I'll be telling you more about that in a little bit.
So just to talk a little bit more about the PLPs, and Jeff Evans referred to it as a journey and a roadmap. So the PLP is a learning tool and record of each child's learning journey from 7th grade on to high school. And this learning is planned and designed for each unique student and takes into account their strengths, their interests, their challenges, their needs, their interests, our learning profile or learning style. And the students have choices and options beyond what is done, as you saw from the video, what's done within the classroom, and that they can go beyond that in order to show that they've met graduation requirements. And again, this promoting multiple pathways to graduation and to attain proficiency-based graduation requirements, or as we refer to in the Common Core State Standards, skills to be ready to be college and career ready. So we're going to spend a little time more about the PLP process, and we're going to be using, CCS has developed a process for students to identify their goals, their learning styles, and the activities or abilities that align with our school academic expectations and the student's pathway toward graduation. Again, we're going to take, each student was going to take a multiple path or different path to get through this. And the process includes the critical elements that Kathy spoke about earlier. So currently, our current 6th graders is the first class that will be going through this process. And we're going to start, if you look at the inventory of student profile, we're going to have the students take their self-assessment survey next month through their U-Skills class. And then in the fall, we're going to look at that data and have them identify their goals and then develop a plan or the tasks or activities that they're going to accomplish to show that they've met the proficiencies. They'll actually implement those tasks. They'll assess and reflect on them, and then they may decide to revise them and then continue their plan for 8th grade. They may decide, I want to go back and look at my interest survey again or take another interest survey and then identify new goals and follow through with that. So that's the process that we're going to follow. And again, this is an evolutionary process because it's going to start in 7th grade, but it's going to follow the kids all the way to high school and college, or just 12th grade.
So we thought long and hard about how we're going to implement this at CCS. This information isn't important. It's just a piece of paper with some marks on it unless there's a dialogue between teacher and student. That's the critical part of this. So we really want to set up a structure that's going to allow the teachers the time to talk to students and the students access to their teachers. We've talked about having, so right now there's 4 Omega support room teachers. And we're going to find 4 flexible partner teachers to pair with each of those Omega teachers. I will be a flexible partner teacher. Flexible partner teacher has to be somebody who knows the students, who understands standards-based learning and the personalized learning path. Remember, this is just one component of the standards-based learning and the personalized learning pathway. It has to be somebody who has a more flexible schedule, because that person's also going to provide relief for the support room teacher, so the support room teacher can work with their set of students. So other candidates for this type of job might be Heidi Hustis, Ed Bianchi, school administrator, people who understand the system, understand the process, but have a little bit of greater flexibility. How we would do this is we take the support room of 24 students and basically divide it 12 and 12, being thoughtful of having equal distribution of 7th graders and 8th graders. 7th graders are going to be more active in this planning phase. I actually wrote on the board behind you, Susan, because I forgot a clicker, and just in case like I needed to pull anything out, I just wanted to have another place where I had this information. So 7th graders are going to have, this is the active implementation time. This is when there's going to be 3 to 5 meetings, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about what those meetings might look like. And that's why there's only 6 7th graders per teacher. In 8th grade, students are just in their maintenance phase. They already will have developed their plan. It's going to be revisited in 9th grade. And there are components to the, wow, they also didn't quit. There's components to the PLP that 8th graders have to do that they're already doing. So it's nothing new. It's things like we're already using Naviance for registration. We're already using Naviance, or we're going to start incorporating Naviance more for a Who Am I survey that's going on to the 9th grade teachers. So 8th graders have pieces that are actually already in place, but it's going to be incorporated now through this bigger system. What we will do is have times to meet either in support room. That's a support room is homeroom. It's about a 25-minute block when teachers have some flexibility with what the kids are doing. Usually it's a greeting and then there's an activity, but an activity for one day might be that I would come in and lead the morning activity so that Mr. Lutz, for example, could meet with his 6th, 7th graders, a couple of minutes each. Or it might be during a planning time or an IS time or during a lunch time. If I can come and provide some relief in terms of supervision, a teacher can go and meet with the students. So it's going to have to work for both teacher and students, but we're going to find times that they can meet one-on-one. Part of these meetings don't have to be one-on-one. There is an opportunity for, like Audrey mentioned, for students to take some of these inventories or do some of the work that they're going to do on their PLP in a classroom setting. In a minute, actually right now, I will walk you through what a PLP, I'm going to have to sit down, that's fine, what a PLP might look like or how it's going to look. And you will get to see basically how some of the inventory, some of the activities are things that you can do in a classroom setting, like looking at careers, going through careers. So we're using Naviance to house the plan. I have a sample student. That was just a screenshot of what Naviance will look like. Why can't I just log in? Usually I can just log in. No, that's not that one. Okay. Oops. I'm taking you through this on purpose just so you can see how it's looking for us and what we would be doing. So this is sort of the back end as a staff member. So I have a sample student, Laura Bryan. There's a whole list of tasks that you can assign a student. So if there's something we feel that we're missing or that we want to add to this plan, we can personalize the plan by creating a task. These are tasks that either other schools have done or that VSAC has created. VSAC owns and houses the Naviance platform for us. But VSAC has very generously made it very easy for us because they have figured out what would be the 7th grade program that would meet all the critical elements as described in the AOE for the personalized learning plan. So they already have these 8 tasks that meet the requirements from the AOE. Again, these requirements or meeting these requirements doesn't mean anything if you don't have the rich conversation with an advisor or an adult that you trust and that can help lead your path. But these things would meet just the letter of the law. So I can assign these to any students, and then if I go back, I'm going to see the view that my student would have. So if she logs in, she sees that she has assigned me a task. She can go on and take the task. So this is a middle grade value survey. So she can talk about what are her values, choose words about her values, and then write a short paragraph. Save for later or keep working on it. And about me, she also can look at the other tasks that are assigned. So for example, this complete career cluster finder, this might be a classroom activity. It does not have to be a one-on-one activity. Basically what this provides is an opportunity for students to figure out what their interests are in terms of careers, and then explore career clusters to figure out, okay, if my interests are in medicine, here's all the different things I might be wanting to look at. It's trying to connect the path then for them as a 7th grader. These are my interests. This is where I might be going in life. So what do I need to do once I get to high school to get myself there? So we're starting those conversations. So the inventories can be done in a classroom setting, but the conversation is done one-on-one. There's also an opportunity to document or provide a journal for work that a student has done. So this morning I just uploaded this. I think I'll play it because it's kind of cute. Maybe we'll play. Maybe it won't. I'm just going to play this. Words to our school song, actually. That for a particular reason. If you listen to the words of our school song, it actually really talks about a personalized learning path, not on purpose, but it really talks about learning how to be good citizens and how to be their best selves. So anyway, kids can upload songs, videos, documents, just representation of like an electronic portfolio. I also completed a goal, but okay, so here's an example of an academic goal. So it's a SMART goal, and this might be something that a 7th grader would think that they want to do in order to become eligible for French 2 at CVU. So these are just 2 tiny components of a big and robust plan. We were given an example of a plan from a 12th grader at the last PLP committee meeting. And those plans can have transcripts from all 4 years of CVU. They can have work samples from all 4 years of CVU and add in what they did at CCS. It's really going to be a timeline of growth and learning for these students. So, and again, this is just a place to house and keep our plan, keep like the tool that's going to guide personalized learning. This is just a component of the whole idea of flexible pathways and proficiency-based learning, proficiency-based graduation requirements. So this is just one component of that bigger picture, the bigger learning style that's coming into play. So that's what we have, that's where we're at right now. If anyone has questions about PLPs in Charlotte.
Well, as you know, I asked at the earlier meeting, my concern is that this is all great and we have to do it, but I'm concerned about the impact it has on teacher time and how we're fitting into the schedule. I like that we're going to manage to fit it in large part in support room. So that's taking away from something they were doing in support room. But what is that taking away from you and Ed and Heidi and whoever else gets roped in? Is that like other tasks have to go away and that will have to be planned? What things you just have to let go of?
I think it's a good question in two levels. One is, what does it do? How does it impact the people who are doing the PLPs? I actually think it adds, for many of us, the opportunity to get to know sort of kids in an advisory type setting. You get to know kids pretty well. You follow those kids through at least 7th and 8th grade, but it will be expanded. And those conversations don't have to be very long. To have a meaningful conversation, a lot of the time we spend in less meaningful conversations. To have a meaningful conversation with someone about what does it mean if your goal is to be in French 2 at CBU? Why? Why do you want to do that? Well, this person said I want to do it so I can get advanced placement credit, you know, in college. Or somebody might not even realize that's the goal and that you can start having those conversations. But a meaningful conversation is not going to take too long. And I think it really adds to really getting to know 7 kids or 12 kids really well.
As they transition to high school where they're going to have advisories, more about advisory like placement.
Yeah, I'm less worried about implementing this plan. I think we have a really good system. I think the flexibility of someone like me or Heidi or Ed, it lends itself to this. I think it's manageable. I think our teachers are very devoted. When you asked your question at the CBU board, I think it is a bigger question. The plan, I think we can use this tool and do it really nicely, succinctly. The bigger question around proficiency-based learning and how is that going to change our assessments, our learning targets, our teaching strategies, I think that's a bigger question, and we're still grappling with that. This is something we can actually, it's tangible. We can actually create something and look at it, and that can guide us. It's harder to talk about changing a whole teaching philosophy.
And just to share that the people that we've talked to help with us are all excited to be part of the support person for the classroom teacher and are excited to see what to do with that. So it's not like people are saying, no, we can't add this onto our schedule. It's an opportunity for them to connect with kids in a deeper way than we have in the past. And as Kathy said, the committee that we're on for the district that's working with the Greater Schools Partnership and the AOE, we're actually trying to figure out that 3-year plan, which we didn't want to share with you because it's so drafty, of how we're going to change the bigger shift and paradigm shift for teachers, parents, and everyone else regarding standards-based learning.
Thank you.
So I guess I'm really having a hard time understanding how personalized learning fits with standard-based learning. So we know about Common Core, we know about proficiency or standards-based learning where there are objective academic targets you have to meet. This, to me, appears like sort of a distraction or a detour. You're asking a kid to take a career cluster survey. You know, that's like going off on a tangent that has nothing to do with specific academic targets that they're going to have to meet.
Well, I think you have to connect the dots for a student. So if they say, I'm really interested in medicine, or that was the example in that video we watched, I keep going back there. You have to help a student. The reason we're doing this is to help a student learn about that path to get there. And Jeff mentioned it seems like kids sort of wake up in junior and senior year and like, oh, I want to go to college and I want to get into a good college, and not really understand the weight that freshman and sophomore year, those classes and that work has on the final, like the end result of graduation. So this starts that conversation early around the pathway. I understand sort of the detour. I think there's some components to Act 77 that would clarify it if we could go further into the Act. The Act talks about flexible pathways, meaning that kids can learn towards their learning, can show proficiency towards their learning targets in many different ways, whether it's in that shadow experience, taking college classes, doing all these different things so that kids can kind of pick a flexible pathway, and that would be designed.
But that's my question, right? So you're saying they get to define their goal, but everything I heard about proficiency-based learning is that there's an objective goal that everyone has to meet. They can't decide their goal is not to learn algebra or English, but their goal is to do something else, can they?
There's learning targets or proficiencies that everybody has to show, or skills everyone has to show proficiencies in, standards everyone has to show proficiencies in. So his example was showing impact, right? Or one of those. And so you can show that in many different ways. It's not just by taking one test and getting a good grade on it. It might be through a learning-based environment.
It strikes me as being like really misguided to imagine that a 7th grader has any insight into, or should be made to narrow his focus into a potential career, right? So I mean, it's like you said, they need to kind of understand what it takes to get into college. I suspect even a lot of college students go through a process of career discovery. I mean, I can tell you that I had a friend who happens to be a lawyer now, and he took a career survey in college, which, because he enjoyed the outdoors, suggested he might be either a ship captain, an FBI field agent, or a rodeo clown. And he ended up taking a different path, but I kind of feel like a 7th grader, maybe it's a little early in the game to.
I agree. As a school counselor, it's one of the 3 main components that we're supposed to be teaching as career exploration, but it's not about choosing a career. It's about understanding that life goes beyond 7th grade, that the decisions you're making now impact the decisions in 9th grade, impact the decisions in 12th grade, which will impact college and beyond. So it's about, and it's also for some kids, it's about providing them a dream. Some kids are never asked, what do you want to be when you grow up? Some kids are asked ad nauseum or pushed in a direction, but some kids are never asked. So it's helping kids, it's opening doors and understanding that life is a pathway for students and trying to connect those dots with them, but not pigeonholing them into any one thing. No student in 7th grade is going to come up with like, I should be a outdoors, whatever you said, and then be held to that. But it does help kids to try to figure out, what are my interests? Where am I going in life? What are the things that I need to feel satisfied and to have be positive and happy in my life? Certain kids need to be working in an environment with other people. Certain people need to be more isolated and more introverted people. So it's just getting to know themselves and some self-realization, but it's not to pigeonhole them in one career.
And if you saw the process, Eric, there's a time for your assessing and looking at what you've done, and you can go back and reassess and then change your goals. But as far as the target, the transferable skills to be college and career ready, that's what Jeff was talking about, that we all have to reach to those targets along the way.
Right, but those are targets, if I understood it right, those are, you look at each kid's assessment for any class, there are some, the transferable skills are the ability to articulate your argument, and that might be in English, it might be in social studies, or to use data, that might be in science, or it might be in another discipline. But those are all academic tools. And so I guess I've just been struggling with all the emphasis that there seems to be on reflecting on or exploring things that aren't related to sort of academic outcomes.
And I think what Kathy and I were saying, and I think Jeff was trying to say, that it's just, people have different learning styles, and our goal is everyone needs to show those transferable skills, but they may do it in a different pathway. So,
right, but are you making those kids understand that there's an objective academic outcome? Because this sounded like they get to design not their pathway, but their outcome, right? They choose, where they want to go rather than how they're going to get to where you want them to go.
The things that, maybe I didn't spend enough time on what the actual tasks are. There are things like a value survey, an interest survey. The career cluster, I just gave that as an example because that's something we could do in a classroom-based setting, because I agree, that is not the most valuable component of this. There's 2 goals, an academic and a personal goal, and those 2 goals can change as often as you look at the plan. And a kid can log on and look at this plan weekly. But it's the idea of how to set a goal, what is a SMART goal, how to measure when you've achieved your goal. But basically the biggest inventories are about values and interests. And those things matter. For a lot of kids, some kids are just naturally interested in learning and have a great work ethic. But there's lots of kids who have this attitude of like, why does this matter? And we're trying to put meaning into learning through this plan. Also, I think the other thing is, we can't get too hung up on the PLP, because the PLP is just a tool, one teeny component of this much greater idea of personalizing learning. The PLP, and we're using Naviance because it was adopted by the district, it was adopted by the AOE as the platform that they recommended, and then the district is already using it because of registration. And there's some constraints from Naviance, and we just have to take those what they are and then make the meaningful conversation happening in the classroom.
But isn't it sort of like, if the goal is we try to have as many kids as possible be successful completing algebra in 8th grade, we still have that goal as a school. It doesn't go away because a whole bunch of kids and their personalized learning plans say, I just want to be in 7th grade math and 8th grade.
Well, that's kind of my question. When you said they set their own goals, but are you directing them towards goals that are appropriate to the academic outcomes that they're trying to?
I'm just going back to my notes that we're looking at their goals, learning styles, and abilities that are aligned with our academic goals at the school, as well as those transferable skills. So we want to make sure that
our standards, the assessments, our curriculum are all aligned to the transferable skills. But yeah, the academic piece is a big piece of that.
This isn't a place for a student to say, I don't want to take algebra. My goal is to take algebra.
Everyone will take algebra or 8th grade algebra.
That's not what this type of academic goal is. This is not a place for a student to say, my pathway is gonna go all the way to the left, and I'm just gonna leave high school. That's not the intent of this. The intent is to help students feel some kind of ownership or some kind of meaning for their education. And that, again, comes from the conversation with the person who's doing the goals with them. So if a student started to talk about, like, my goal is to fail math so I don't have some big expectations, that's where we can go back. Once we get into high school, you can go back to, like, well, what do you want to do after high school? And why would math be important? If you said in this interest inventory that you really want to go into engineering, why is math important there? And so math is a struggle right now. What can we do to alleviate that struggle today so that you can reach your goal, your further post-secondary goals? But again, this is just a platform, it's a tool to start those conversations. It's not to derail the education.
Yeah. And it is about their learning journey, and the academic piece.
Have these objectives that you've been outlining not been part of what we're doing at this point?
The PBGR, the proficiency-based grading requirements?
Knowing to achieve their goals, all the things you're talking about, is that something we have not been trying to do?
I don't think we've had an explicit way, we haven't had a system or explicit way that there was expectations to have those conversations in a very consistent and explicit manner. Now, I think what we're doing here is creating a system where there's an expectation. You're going to have 3 to 5 meetings a year with this one-on-one with this student. It's much more explicit. I think there are students who've had those conversations and who are more ready for those conversations. There's teachers who are more ready to have those conversations, but I don't think it's been an expectation that all students will have those conversations and all teachers will take part.
And what about the student who needs 8 or 9 meetings?
We'll have to make that
Then we'll make that happen. That's the differentiation piece.
This has the scent of Howard Gardner about it,
Multiple intelligence.
which is not a good scent because his theory is not a definable theory, because the point is it's not definable, so you can't test it. Where does judgment enter into this?
What type of judgment? Judgment from the teacher?
People who are supposed to be guiding these children. How are you going to distinguish between the child who is backing away from the difficulties of whatever he thought or she thought she was interested in, and a child who was just established a legitimate different objective?
So this is just one component that's, and too bad we don't have our Venn diagram. By diagram that we just shared in the last session, this is one component. It's not replacing or taking away from our MTSS system. That's a tiered system of support that identifies which students might need extra support and extra help. So there's those assessments, those support systems are not going away. This is just one more tool to try to bring students into their education and find meaning. But it's not, this doesn't replace the MTSS system or the Common Core
Or the HSS.
You flashed briefly what I think were the state-defined critical elements. Is that what that
Mm-hmm. I
was?
can bring it back up if you like.
Is there any recognizable content in those things? And when you go to a meeting like this, and the gist of the meeting is you got to define a personal learning plan for this person. If you still have content expectations, I'm having a hard time, as you can see, understanding what on the one hand you're trying to describe as flexibility and sensitivity and meeting goals, specific goals, objectives.
So the critical elements that I showed Those are the critical elements of a personalized learning plan, of that tool that we're talking about. Those are not the critical elements of personalized learning. So those are different than the suggested proficiency-based graduation requirements or learning targets. So those are not supposed to be academic content-based. I think the confusion is in the fact that a PLP, we talked about this once, that it should be a capital P and L, and then the P and the N should just be lowercase. This is personalized learning, and this is just the plan that's going to help connect the students and the teachers, but this doesn't take the place of the academic content that they're responsible for. It's just trying to help them have some ownership in their education, but this is not them dictating their education. So the critical elements of a PLP are just what the state is saying, this is what would be really good, these are good conversations to have, these are good, talking about values and interests. Those are things that are going to be good for students to have some understanding of, but those are not the academic content they're expected to be learning.
So do you find, I mean, you said ultimately this is just an exercise in trying to somehow get kids connected and motivated to the academic goals that we're trying to help them achieve. Is that a deficit now? I mean, are kids not able to engage academically, that they're lost and they need sort of this type of exercise to get them on task?
I don't know if I could make a broad statement that kids are lost and they need this. I think this is the idea of a PLP, or personalizing their learning, is meant to help all students, but there are students who really have a hard time connecting 7th grade math to real life. And to lose that meaning when you're in the classroom, it translates to lost motivation to do homework, to pay attention in class, to be interested in learning. So it is an effort to attach meaning to the learning, but I don't think blanket statement that without this now all of our students are, crumbling. I don't think this is supposed to be an enhancement to education, but we have existed quite fine before the time of PLPs. But it is meant to enhance meaning for students. And it's just a tool, again, to help them feel like they have some ownership in their personalized learning pathway.
It just strikes me as an incredibly exhaustively time-intensive method for fixing a problem that may not exist.
But it's not a choice, it's a law. We have to do it. So you can think it or not, but I mean, we have to put something in place to meet the requirements of that law.
I always supported the phrase real life with children, because it doesn't mean anything to them, but because you use it. So how now are you going to better tie the intent from that to real life than you could before?
Well, I think that I have these conversations with kids right now. I have these conversations. Today I had a conversation with a student who's an 8th grader going to become a CVU freshman next year, and we were talking about her academic anxiety and how she's worried about her grades 7th and 8th grade, and I was talking about how 7th and 8th grade are really prep work to learn the habits and the skill sets and to learning habits, learning traits, so that when she goes to CVU, she can actually put them into practice. So that's a conversation I can have, because we talk about how grades matter as a freshman and as a sophomore and as a junior and as a senior when you're looking at colleges. So I think I try to put a real life emphasis all the time for kids, because especially adolescents, they're living like they're in the spotlight, and that has implications both in their learning and their social, and also their social and emotional output to the world. They're just sort of all living like they're the only people, and I try to give them some context. But what my point was going to be is, I had that conversation today because a student and I have an existing relationship, and she came to me. I don't know if there's 49 other students who could actually use that conversation, because I don't have the opportunity to have that with all of those students. This will create, it's sort of an equalizer. It's going to create an opportunity for all students to have that one person that's following their education, following their personalized path, and helping them think through their goals and what do you want to do, and why do you want to do that, and why is this important to your learning? What happens when you're not handing in your homework? You're doing your homework even, and then it gets lost somewhere between school and home. What's going on for you? Why don't you care? Those conversations need to be happening with all students, and this is equalizing that opportunity.
I don't think there should be much of a change from what, if it is a significant change from what we've been doing, it's a serious problem to date. You know, years ago, Eric, I said, years ago, that we were on our way to having every student defined as a special ed student. If you lose the titles, PLP, special ed, whatever, and you're talking about the time and effort that goes into this, we are almost there. Kristen, it's the law, but the law, as we've been discovering, doesn't mean anything other than, yeah, we talked about this and we wrote some things down. The Common Core standards, the content standards, if I understand this correctly, are no different. Are they?
The Common Core standards are the same, yes.
So, then the question becomes, how is it an administrator possibly going to evaluate the teacher's performance in this really amorphous structure? How are you going to be able to tell if the teacher is performing satisfactorily or the child doesn't have the ability to do whatever's being communicated?
So I don't imagine that supervision and evaluation is drastically going to change. An administrator is still going to go into classroom and observe a teacher working with students and see how that's all going. And that's still going to be the chief thing that teachers are going to be evaluated on, how children are learning in the classroom. And the PLP is an opportunity for a student to add input to, here's where I think I'm going with my learning. Here's where I think I'm going with my life. Starting in 7th grade, it's very much one component of this is to start helping kids see the chain link between 7th grade and they're going to graduate from high school in 6 years. And what is it that interests them? Are there ways to like help with, at the high school level, flexible pathways, different learning opportunities, so that, you know, maybe you do have a freshman kid whose math isn't their big thing, but car engines are of major interest. You know that, and maybe you figure out how to teach Algebra 1 through working with a car engine. Those are the kinds of things, but that's not going to have bearing on what we do with supervision and evaluation. We're not going to all of a sudden change how we evaluate teachers, and it's going to be based on how these personalized learning plans are implemented. Think of it as a guidance record in a way that is like student-centered and that travels with the student. So by the time that the student graduates from high school, the student can take the personalized plan that that student has developed starting wherever, kindergarten maybe someday, and can leave with that. This is my plan. This is who I was as a learner for all those years. I think that introspection and self-reflection is a good thing for learners. I think it would be interesting, wouldn't it, if any one of us could, if we had a record like that and could look like, wow, this is what I wrote about myself as a learner in 3rd grade, and by 7th grade, this is how I saw myself as a learner. I think that would have been helpful. So I think it is some work, but I think that it kind of folds into parent-teacher conferences, for instance. I think that's where the evaluation actually happens. The parent, the student, is presenting their personal learning plan to the parent in front of the teacher. There's a conversation there. I think it's right in time evaluation about how things are going.
Elaine, are you concerned at all about the time issue? I mean, it just seems to me, like for instance, I go to teacher conferences, right?
Yep.
And little piece of paper, kids say, you know, what did you do well this?
Right.
What do you, could you work on a little bit? Takes them 10 minutes, but it is actually useful that they stopped and thought about, reflected a little bit. I mean, as a 3rd grader or 5th grader, you're not asking for much more than just a basic self-reflection on kind of how they're doing, or, you know, are they behaving in class, that kind of thing. The idea of having all these man hours to get a 5th grader or a 7th grader to sort of, you know, let's put it in another way, talking about sort of different paths. I mean, if a kid is kind of on the college path, that's kind of all you need to know, right? I mean, you know, the idea
I just think that, you know, my younger son was in Williston, they are in houses. So he was in a house for 4 years. And back then, so this was quite a few years ago, there were student-led conferences. So I can remember what it was like to go to a conference with a 5th grader who led the conference and said, this marking period, these are the books I read. You know, he would never have done that on his own. He would never, in 100 million years, he would have been happy for me to sit with the teacher and look at the grades and say, good work, Michael, or you need to get on the stick, right? That would have been fine with him. But because the pressure was on him, that makes a kid look at their work a whole lot differently because they know they're in the hot seat. We do a lot in education that puts parents in the hot seat, that puts teachers in the hot seat, and we let the kid that is the source of the, you know, all of our energies just sit there and observe from the sidelines. And I think that this is an attempt to do that. And if we do it well, it won't be a ton more work. It will just be more focused work. And it will really help kids, I think, be more self-reflective and prepare.
Does the state require that you use that particular tool?
The Naviance tool, they require it at the high school level, right? It's required at the high school level, and so then we decided that it makes sense for us to, you know, do the same thing in 7th and 8th grade, at least going out the gate with this.
As I understand it, the state really endorsed that, so that's why VSAC has taken it upon themselves to create that task, make sure they're meeting the critical elements, to provide the program to make it easily implemented. So the state really has endorsed it. We did see schools using Haiku, which is another software-based platform. What we really wanted to do is make sure that when our students enter into 9th grade, that the counselor is not spending time sorting out a personalized learning plan from Williston versus Charlotte, because the time doing through that paperwork, that would be wasted time spent with the student. So
I just want to say, I think to your point, and in a way to yours too, Clyde, I wouldn't be supporting anything that I thought was like wasted paperwork. If it's just about the paperwork, that's what I said at the SU meeting, then we've missed the boat. That is not what this is about. So the extent to which we can minimize the paperwork and really spend our energies on who are you as a learner? Who do you think you are as a learner? What are the things that you're good at? What are the things we need to work on that you need to work on? How can I help you? Are there other avenues to get there? I think that's important work.
Yeah, I mean, I think a culture of self-reflection is good, but when you get into these sort of computerized inventories,
yeah, no,
I think it's a little bit
I hear that.
almost impersonal.
I think it's important for us to hear that and think about that as we're like just going out the gate with this.
Sorry.
Has anybody heard Governor Shumlin's fair Oglesby story?
I have, yes.
I mean, we've heard it repeatedly. You were not yet in the room when I said this has the scent of Howard Gardner about it. It also has the scent of functioning, what's the term in parenthesis, loci, however you say that. I think you're right, that to me. On the one hand, it's going to be the rest on what it has always rested on, which is the quality of the teacher. And that's what's going to impact all back up here, the support work, all of those things. It's going to become very time consuming if it's done properly. By properly, I mean according to the format.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Kathy.
I made a note of
Thank you
it.
for the presentation, and I think we're going to be talking about this more. I'd like to see a follow-up on the first year of how it goes down next year. You've got 2 people here who have kids who are going to be in the first class to do it. So, be interested to see from lots of perspectives, teachers and guidance counselors, whatever. Thank you very much. Okay, moving on. Reports to the board. The principal's report. Audrey, is there anything you want to call out in particular?
Sure, I'd like to share that our SBAC testing is going really well. 7th and 8th grade started at the end of March, just finished a week ago. They had makeups last week, and 4th grade and 6th grade are in their 2nd week. And the students are really persevering and following through, and teachers are doing well with it, and the Chromebooks are working fabulously with all the students. And Greg and I were just reflecting that the infrastructure that we've been building over the past 3 years has really come through and worked for us. So we're very pleased. I mean, I'd like to officially thank the technology committee, who's worked a lot of hours this year to try to get ready for and supporting the teachers and the students. And we're pleased with the performance so far, knowing it's our first year.
When do you get the results?
They say within 3 months. There's certain pieces that have to be assessed, but 3 months.
In the future, it will be almost immediately.
Oh, I see.
Mm-hmm.
Not this year, but in the future it will be.
It's hard to imagine when you're writing 7 paragraphs that it
I
could
know.
be immediate.
Yeah.
They are, though.
Yeah.
They're taking it seriously. They're taking their time with it.
Yeah, that's
I
great.
was just sharing the story with Christensen.
Yeah, I think it just has to be that the kids are being told in a way that they understand that this isn't just a test, that this is giving your teachers really good information to help make sure that you're understanding what they're teaching you. Because I think, you know, my assessment at home is that at least the 6th grade, they're really serious about it. So, and why I think they are, because they've had that sort of base all along, that this is, we're doing this for you, we're not doing this at you.
Right.
Which is great.
And it's a more authentic kind of test, too. It's not just fill in the blanks.
Did anybody have anything from the principal's report they wanted to call out?
I do. And this may be, based on what I learned in the last meeting, more addressed to you than the principals. So the kindergarten class,
Yes.
the projection was 40, it turned out to be 25. It was a pretty large miss.
Yeah.
I mean, this isn't like a demographic
No,
estimate
I
of
know.
where we're going to be in
Right.
2025. I mean, this
Yeah.
is like
Yep.
how many kids are showing up in the fall.
Right.
Is that something that we,
I could follow up on that with NESDEC. That's who does our demographic studies.
are
And
there
you're
better
not- I
sources than the one?
That is the one. We used to have a volunteer from IBM who did it, and last year he stopped doing it. He retired. NESDEC is pretty much who does it for all of New England.
And so from what I understand, there was 25 who signed up, and then we'd expect at least 5 more, 6 more, something like that over the
3 to
summer
5.
to trickle in over there.
That's on average. The trend has been for the past 5
But
years.
it's
So we
still-
may get
It's
that.
still a 30%.
Yeah, it's a big
I will
miss.
follow up on that.
Because that was
I just-
a budget request, right, for 2 pairs?
Right.
So
Yes, it was. Okay, moving on. CSSU debrief. Does anybody want to debrief? Go ahead, Kristen.
I thought it was great. You know what I loved is that change is so hard, and you know we love Molly's presentations, but I was so impressed with Jeff's part of the common topic tonight that I just feel like he's going to hit the ground running
Yeah.
and be fabulous. So for anyone here who comes, the common topic at CSSU is always the hour before our meeting, and it's usually very interesting. So if you have an extra hour to spare, you should try to go.
And anybody have anything they wanted to call out of the stuff in our packet for CSSU? There's nothing huge. Facilities Committee, just a quick update. We are putting bid documents together for both the roof projects and the lighting project and the Lula project. So I shouldn't just say both. Anybody that's overly interested, I have them to look at if you want to peruse them. And we have brought Tom Barden into the loop to help us this summer to oversee all of it, to take care of everybody, to kind of oversee all the projects for us. And he actually reviewed the bid documents for us today. So we expect a request for bid due out next week, bids in 3 weeks, and hopefully at our May meeting we'll have contracts to approve and get the work started as soon as the kids are off for the summer.
Are you talking about Tom Barton as a clerk of the works, or what exactly is his role?
He's going to be, I won't call him clerk, project manager-ish. He's going to come in and kind of oversee it all for us. he's gonna coordinate the roofers and the electricians and the guys coming in to do the elevators.
It sounds almost like a general contractor.
Except he's not bringing in each of the subs by himself. Where the subs are gonna be the bids, he's gonna be our man on site to kind of coordinate everybody. But
And what's the fee for this service?
we are gonna get a fee this week. It's gonna be, he's talked about, I'll talk to Bob Mason and get you the exact number, but it's reasonable. I forget exactly.
Is it below the figure that would require
Yes.
bidding?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So if anybody's interested, we got drawings and stuff you can take a look at. Moving on, discussion matters. The policy changes, these came up at the CSSU as well. Does anybody have anything in particular on the policy?
I have a couple.
Folks, I have to apologize. I did not have this in my mind as an obligation yet. I was late for the meeting, and then I went to the wrong place, and by then it was too late to worry about it, so I wasn't at this meeting.
Well,
So
since
if you
you
have
missed on
questions-
travel-related expenses, we'll let that one slide.
I have a few, so the discussion matters are the ones that are gonna go back to the policy board, right?
Yeah.
So I'll just rip these out and give them to you. I have a few minor, administrator instead of principal. And the one thing, actually, since Cindy, you're here, on F29, that's the grade advancement. Underneath definitions, the next paragraph says, the board believes that the primary goal of education. I think, we're talking about the supervisory union and the school districts. I don't think then what the board believes should be, that just seems odd there to me.
Okay.
But I'll give you my other couple.
Anybody else?
You all good?
Is there anything on that one?
I'm glad. Professional development calendar, and Elaine just left the room. Cindy, do you want to do a brief?
So this is on your agenda for discussion this month and approval hopefully in May. This is just your approval of the 5 additional days that go beyond the regional calendar of 175. You're being asked to add 2 student days and then, make sure I count them all, 12 days for the teachers for professional development. Well, not 12, but 9. So the calendar looks largely like it has in the past. One difference being is rather than having the Friday off of what used to be Vermont NEA days, switching that to Columbus Day to align with what happens for parents who might have that day off so they can have it off with their children. The parent-teacher conferences would be October 9th and March 25th, unless otherwise scheduled by individual faculty members. And right now, the last student day would be June 9th, although we have noted the 3 snow days for next year, just in case.
So there's 1 snow day built in like this year, or no?
There's 3 built
3
in.
built in, so you say the last day is the 9th, but
It could be the 14th if there were 3 snow days.
So the only thing that I wanted to point out is that we put the, and this isn't really related exactly to that stuff, but on the calendar it lists the Jewish holidays in September, and we have school off the 23rd for Yom Kippur. If it could be noted, Sandy, that starts at sundown on the 22nd, just so that if there are evening activities. And then also Rosh Hashanah does start on the 13th, but the days that kids will be out of school if they attend temple is the 14th and 15th. So it'd be nice if there were not field trips and school pictures scheduled for that day.
The 15th for Rosh Hashanah?
Yes, that would be great. And I don't know, it could be the same for Eid, which is the 23rd, but I don't know. But that might also start at sundown on the 22nd. So.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anything else on the calendar?
Given the logistics of parent-teacher conferences and the difficulties of scheduling, are these 2 days enough time?
Probably not. I think that most of the teachers are getting them done at night during the day and for a 2-week period before and after that day. But there are some who do try and do a vast majority of them on the day. It varies by teacher,
So
is my understanding.
I can give a real world example. One of my daughters in a class who scheduled almost all of the class on the day off in March, but clearly couldn't fit everybody in, and there was some on either side. Some people couldn't come that day, and there was flexibility. So the answer is no, not really. It's not really enough time, but you can get a majority if planned ahead. You can get the majority of your class done on that day.
And you think about it too, a lot of parents, if that's a day off, they're doing something else. They're going to say, no, I need a different day. So I think the fact teachers are flexible is very nice. But I think even if we added extra days, parents would be seeking an alternative time some of the time.
The 8th grade process works pretty well. They just
Where
set
you
up.
sign up online, that is nice.
The teachers are all in the gym, and you just go around in a circle.
That was a new process that
I
we
thought it was
piloted
nice.
this year, and it's, the feedback we got from parents was that it worked really well, having 2 days. They offered Monday and tomorrow night. They're available from 3:30 to 7.
And so do you sign up for a block of time, or you just show up whenever?
You just show up, and then they have it set up where all the teachers are there, and then you sign up for when you want to see them, and then you go and sit with them for 15 minutes, and go to the world language teacher, go to the science teacher, because the support rooms are multi-age, so that you have 7th and 8th grade. So sometimes if you're a support room teacher and you're a 7th grader and it's an 8th grade teacher, you don't really have much contact with them. So it allows all the parents to go to all of them, and we've gotten really positive feedback. And we'll probably continue it for next year too. They like that.
Okay, moving on, communications board's corner. Do anybody want to write a nice thank you letter to the community, to the paper? Anybody want to volunteer?
I'll write it. It's fine.
All right.
You did a fabulous job on the last article you wrote that was on the front page.
Oh, well, thank you. Okay, thank you, Kristen. Just moving forward on boards corners. I know we go through this all the time, but if you just write a list out for the next meeting or the meeting after, just like ideas that we could use for a board corner. We all have people who ask us questions about what they want about the school. Tom Powell wants to know about special ed. Anything we could write 500 words about that would lift some of the iron curtain would be useful. And as long as it's out there, I think it's helpful. Anyway, just a
And maybe
thought.
too at our retreat, maybe we can sort of come up with some ideas for better long-term planning.
Yeah, exactly. 6.4, behavior management update. Yeah, this didn't come up at our agenda meeting.
No.
Okay. All right, so we're going to remove 6.4 from the agenda.
Yeah, I feel like that usually is an April topic, though.
It was a big topic last
If we
April.
could get it in May, because I think, especially with the big uptick, and the request for an additional behavior person, it'd be really good to see where we are and, see what we need to do going forward.
Sounds good to me. Can we make a note to put that on the May agenda? Thank you. 6.5, grade 3-4 looping model. Susan Nordstrand,
Yeah.
you asked for this.
So, I guess what I was looking for is some background information on sort of the history of looping at CCF. So right now, the way I see the lower grades, the triple E model has changed so that some kids are, I guess you could call it looping in the 3 and 4 year old program in triple E, and then straight kindergarten, and then there's the 1-2 loop and the 3-4 loop. And so 3 years ago, it was my understanding that the 3-4 loop was kind of reconfigured based on a population boom or bust, I'm not even sure. So I think one loop didn't finish, or some kids were shuffled so that they didn't sort of complete the 2-year loop. And then when Jen Leach was hired, she finished a 3-4 loop and then started a 3 loop and then left between 3 and 4. So there's kind of this, it seems to me like there's been this issue with the loops not necessarily completing the 2-year loop with the same teacher. And so I guess I was trying to figure out, you know, just as a relatively new person to the school, is like how, you know, it's kind of the assumption that you're looping when you have your exit conference in 2nd grade. You're going to go into a 3-4 loop. But that can shift based on, you know, kids and enrollment and things like that. So I'm just wondering if there's a kind of the history of it, how long it's been going on. That I don't have that perspective, and then you know, how are we evaluating looping and the benefits of looping over time? So you might have a child, you know, 12 kids now loop as 3- and 4-year-olds, then loop again 1st and 2nd grade, and then loop again 3rd and 4th. So in effect, they could be with, since there are only like 40-ish kids, some kids, there's only a certain number of ways you can reconfigure those groups. There's some kids that are never together, and then there's some kids that might always be together. So I just kind of had some questions about looping, and then because the families that I spend most time with are ones who are in a loop or headed to a loop, just kind of trying to get a broader understanding of it.
So as far as the history of looping, I've been here for 5 years. Looping was there prior to me coming. So I think it was there longer than that. I don't know, Cindy, you've been here. I know multi-age and looping were going on simultaneously. 3 years ago, we eliminated the multi-age for 3-4. And then the question that you brought up about the change from 2 years ago, where one group of kids did not finish the looping, it had to do with the K-8 configuration committee and the projections of numbers, and going from 2 to 3 as we project out for 5 years. And so I think it was 2 years ago that Greg had to make a decision to cut that looping off for that grade level, and then go into, I think it was 3rd grade, the teachers, the architects took that group so they could finish that, because we needed 3 teachers. And that's why that was changed. I don't believe that that's a pattern that we cut looping overall. It was just because of the projections that happened. And then a lot of communication went out to families about that, why we were doing that piece.
So Susan, is your concern that looping doesn't finish, or that there shouldn't be looping, or?
I think it's just kind of, sometimes I get nervous when people say, you know, and this is not what you said, Audrey, but you know, this is the way it's always been done. And I just kind of wonder, by the 2nd half of 4th grade, what the positive effects are of looping. You know, I just kind of question that. So I think that there's, in a way, some diminishing returns socially for kids. They're ready for a new group of kids. And you know, sometimes it's an amazing match for families, kids, the teacher, and sometimes it's it'd be great to have a fresh start. And I wish that, I don't know if there's an opportunity, you know, if the match isn't working well for some reason, do kids switch from room to room? Does that ever happen? So, you know, if somebody is in the middle of the 3-4 loop or the 1-2 loop, and there's something that's just not functioning properly, do you ever move kids from class to class?
They have occasionally.
They have occasionally. I think it's an administrative decision that works with the team. I would defer to Greg on that. What's been done in the past 5 years. I believe rare, if any, he's done that since we've been together as co-principals.
Okay. And then just because I know that you have had, a lot of people on board have had kids who've gone through the looping, and people in the audience either are about to loop or have looped. I just was trying to have a discussion about looping, since it's a big decision. You know, it's great at the beginning of the school year. You know, there's I think it's ideal. It's a really stress-free transition going from 1st into 2nd, things like that. There's a lot of positives to it, but I think I would just love to somehow have a forum or format to discuss it, just to see you know, by fourth grade, is it something that we should be talking about or looking into next fall?
So in considering, like, looking at the benefits too, if you start fourth grade with the same teacher at third grade, you probably can get into content more quickly because you already
Right, you
have
don't have
that
that
class
3 to
culture, you
16,
have,
yeah.
you know what you're doing. I don't know, I see the real benefit too of 1-2 is that if you have a kid who maybe would benefit by staying an extra year in that 1-2, it's sort of a seamless
Transition.
you know, you can just kind of stay 3 years with that teacher. It's less
Yeah.
likely in the 3-4 loop, I think, that.
Susan, with
Yeah,
personalized learning plans, the kids can just choose which class they want to do.
You're in
So-
second grade, you
but
want an
it's
8th
only
grade
gonna be in
teacher?
Yeah.
6th grade next year, but it won't be down to, you know.
You can pick
the
a
lower
teacher, pick
grades
a
for
class.
years.
Yeah.
And then reassess after.
Yeah,
So-
yeah.
Susan, if you want to have a more in-depth conversation about this, maybe we could put it on the work plan for next year and bring it up at the retreat and talk about it, especially since there's going to be new administration.
So would you want to know sort of like the educational rationale for
Yes, I would.
why we do
Yes,
it
I
and
definitely would.
the pros and
Mhm.
cons?
Yes, and I guess we could just throw out the big research word, you know, what research backs up looping? And is it, are you, you know, when we staff it, do we have the best people in place for looping? And is it, you know, like how do you become the looping, you know, how do you, like as far as best practices go, like what differentiates a straight classroom teacher from a looping teacher? Because that's a, you know, 2 curriculums and it's just a very different way of teaching. That's, I can see pros and cons. I mean, we've had a fabulous experience in first and second. So I think it really works well for grades 1 and 2. And if it says on this that it's a discussion matter, I assume that meant a discussion for not just the board?
Yeah.
Open it up to the
Anybody? Yeah. Sorry,
community, in case
I'm
there's somebody back
not
there
trying to
might have-
hold anybody back.
Might have something to say.
I do, I got something to say.
Just, you gotta say it and say your name for the camera,
I'm
please.
Shay Evans, and I have 2 children who are currently at the end of loops 1 and 1-2 and 1 and 3-4. And I feel like there's been some really positive aspects of that loop, especially for the younger child. We came to CCS, my oldest was halfway through the loop when he got here. And I did think that it was fine for him to transition into the loop, and that I was really actually impressed with his teacher and the classmates for welcoming another child. But my issue is, it's nice for maybe a kid who needs more support and who needs more structure and is kind of maybe a little shy, or you know what I mean, that comfort level is really there for them. But I think that my 2 problems are this. First, I've heard some talk from teachers and other parents that they feel like they need to break up these, you know, best friend groups. I've heard them talk about, or social groups and stuff. But I think the nature of having kids together for 2 years, or having them together for 4 years if they're in 2 loops together, like one of the benefits I think is forming these strong bonds with your classmates. But then I think to sort of at the end of that say, okay, they've made these really strong classroom bonds, and now we're making a conscious effort to break them all up so they can be, you know, with other kids in the next loop. But then maybe that child doesn't get to see their friend again in class for 2 more years. And I know that just based on my kids' experiences, the grades don't often, I haven't seen them mix with kids in the other class really until 4th grade, like on the playground and at recess. They sit with their friends from class at lunch, and they go out and play with their same friends from class. And I think that for a school that has 40 kids per class, it's kind of absurd that maybe my 2nd grader's like, I don't know any of the kids in the other class, because there aren't that many of them, you know what I mean? And my other sort of stronger feeling about the looping is that we have not had a positive experience with our 2nd loop as far as the teacher-student relationship. And I really worry that putting one person in charge of basically half of their elementary education, when maybe that's not a great fit for the teacher or maybe not a great fit for the child, there's no opportunity. And like you just brought up, there's I asked, they just don't switch to the other classroom. They say it's not gonna be good for the student, it's not gonna be good for the other kids, it's not gonna be good for the other teacher, because they've got that rhythm, and sort of adding someone from across the hall or down the hall is not something that they really wanna do. And I feel like as a parent, you feel like your hands are really tied in that case, and that you're just sort of, at the start of the second year of your loop, you're just sort of throwing your kid into this thing that you already know maybe isn't a terrific situation to begin with. So I would encourage, maybe if you're gonna put it for next year, to, you know, if you're gonna talk about it more extensively next year, to say, maybe think about keeping that first and second grade loop, because it seems fine. But then as kids are older, and maybe the boys and girls socially start to break up and spend more time with, you know, kids of the same gender more on the playground and stuff, that maybe, you know, these cliques are forming, and, you know, getting to that kind of tween age, that maybe it would be better to have a third, fourth switch, and then that way it brings more teachers into the fold, instead of just being like, this is your option, and that's all, that the teachers could switch out between different cycles. So it's not always the same 3 teachers on the same 3-4 loop every time. Does that make sense? Thank you.
Given the size of the school, how do you see your options in terms of choice on such matters?
For next year, you're saying?
Well, no, generally speaking, in a small school, you have a hard time having both looping and non-looping. What can you do about it?
Well, the K-8 configuration committee, we did talk about multi-age versus looping, and we got feedback from parents, and I'd have to go back and look at the results, but most families liked looping. And that was one of the recommendations to stay with it based on the feedback from 2 years ago. I know our school is shrinking, and we looked at that when we were, but people said they liked that. And we went to teachers, parents. So that was the recommendation, to stay with it.
During agenda planning, Greg was able to talk a little bit about this with Mark and I. He, to Audrey's point and yours, when you have 2 teachers per grade level, there's only so many configurations you can do. He also shared the concern about the level of depth a teacher can do by trying to do 2 grade levels consistently. So he's already toying in his mind, do we stop looping and go to straight grades, or do we stick with looping? Because that's pretty much where you're at this point in time. And that anomaly, 3-person, 3-4 team will finish their 4th grade loop next year, and there'll only be 2. So you'll have another
Basically
natural end to that loop.
Kindergarten through 4th grade will have 2 teachers per grade at the end of next year, based on our configuration recommendations. Next year we'll lose 1 3-4 teacher, and there'll be 2. Yeah.
But yeah, it's
And
a
we
challenge.
can't even go back to multi-age grades anymore because of math. Because you can't have a teacher teaching 1st and 2nd grade math.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we did do that for 2
I
years.
know, but then the kids are getting farmed out and.
Correct,
Yeah.
and it's not the most effective way
Yeah.
to do that.
You had a comment?
Yeah, I just had a question. Jason Bushy. Why was the decision made to go to looping several years back? And then part 2 would be, why are people responsive to it and they like it? Was there research that says, hey, we should try looping because this is good for the kids because X, Y, and Z? Is there any research that can back that up, or, you know, what?
I know that we've had looping. My oldest started kindergarten in 2003, and it was different. I mean, there was a 2-3 loop. But there's been looping at least back since then. Do you know how far back? At least pre-2003.
I know it's been around for a
Yeah.
while, but there must have been some research or something that indicates, hey, let's do looping because of these reasons. And that's, I guess, what I'm looking for is,
Yeah.
does anybody remember?
The 4 months.
That's what we're hoping to get the next time we come back, and we don't know.
There is research that supports improved outcomes with looping. You always get the kind of input that we have here about it doesn't work for everybody, which brings us back to the challenges of a small school and few teachers. So unless you've been taking a lot of commentary on the side, or Greg has, on the subject? I mean, what's our motivation and what are our options to change? That's the real question.
I think to be continued.
You know, back when we had multi-age, there was also a lot of support for multi-age. A lot of people had great experiences with it, but then there are always children somewhere in the spectrum who don't seem to benefit from it. But then it always comes back to how many teachers do you have and what are your choices? And what, unfortunately, is better for the most greater number of people.
And I can share from the configuration committee study, we did look at multi-age again, and a lot of people had said that their kids hadn't been exposed to that because we moved away from it. I think there was only one grade level doing that multi-age piece, and more people favored the looping or straight grade.
Do I have one more comment? Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm Sarah Scranton. I would love to be a part of the discussion you have, I don't know if I can, when you re-examine the whole looping model and why academically it's in the best interest of the kids. I think that every teacher brings their own unique spin to education and their own style, you know, even in this Common Core world. And I think kids need variety from teachers. And I totally agree with Shay by the time a child gets to the end of 4th grade, they've spent half of their meaningful education at Charlotte Central with one teacher. And, you know, I have one child who's experienced it all. He was in mixed grade 1-2 that then went to a straight 2, then he went into a loop with 3rd grade with Jen Leach, who then left. Oh no, then she went back. He got reconfigured into a new 4th grades, and then he went to 5th grade. So he's had a different configuration every year. And then I have a daughter right behind her who did a looping 1-2 and 3-4. And I too have not had a great experience with looping. And for all the same reasons Shay said, socially, teacher style and personality issues. So I think it's high time you guys kind of reconsidered it and made sure it is still the right decision going forward, and not just because it's how it's been done for the last 10 years.
So are you advocating for straight grades, or are you just raising the question?
I think you should go to straight grades all the way through. I don't understand if you think looping's good for 1-2, why it wouldn't be 3-4. I guess socially and developmentally they're at different stages, but you know, I was surprised to just see 3-4 on the agenda. Well, why would it be good for 1-2 and not 3-4? But you know, you raise good issues with it being such a small school. There's only going to be 2 teachers for 3rd grade and the same 2 teachers for 4th grade and the same 2 teachers for 1st and 2nd. But it is important to give these kids variety and have them exposed to. I mean, the problem is if they're going to get a different teacher, they're with the same group of kids the 2nd year, which doesn't address the social issues. So I don't know. I'd like to just see the research of how it is better for the kids.
The next issue is the school board does not approve the class configuration. That's an administrative decision, which is the point of my question to Audrey about whether she's been taking, or Greg has been taking, extensive commentary on the subject. You know, if we have 90% of the people who want straight grades, then that becomes an easy choice. If it's 2% who want straight grades, it's still an easy choice, but not a popular choice with that 2%. And as I say, as far as the board is concerned, we don't decide anything. So
I can also share, I think last month or the month before, we actually showed, we had to share with you what our configurations were going to be for next year.
And to that point, I mean, you're taking this input now, that decision has essentially been made. So is your response, well, it's been made for the next year, and any change in that will have to wait until the following year? Is that what you're saying, in essence?
Yes, I think at this point, because we planned for it.
I just have one follow-up thing just to ask about. So I think right now there are 5, and so you're saying 2 years there will be 4 teachers who are used to going back and forth between 3rd and 4th grade. Mm-hmm. It's not like they're not accustomed to having 2 sets of curriculum and going from, you know, teaching an 8-year-old to teaching a 9-year-old or whatever. So I would say it's possible that you could switch those 4 people up. It might not be maybe the most popular thing with the teacher, but I think that you would then avoid having, you know, we're gonna take these kids and move them across the hall, and then these go the other direction. Just a thought.
I think the intent that Greg was going to have is, we know we have to go down a teacher next year because of class size, and the recommendation was
Right.
it would happen next year, whatever, looping or straight grade after that teacher
Yeah. Oh,
leaves or is eliminated, retires.
yeah, okay.
But
That's been the plan.
to
but-
Sarah's point, you know, any discussion, we ask for additional information, and all of our meetings are open, so it's not like,
Okay.
you know, even if we're discussed at the retreat, I mean, the retreat's open too, you're welcome to come.
Based on what you heard earlier in the evening, do you have any confidence that this PLP system will address any of the individual concerns that you have?
I have a lot of confidence in Kathy Batty and our other counselor at school, and I think that they'll do their best to fulfill the state mandate. I mean, we don't really have a choice, right? But
Well, I think we have a lot of choice. I think the decision has been made for next year. But the point of my question is addressing the concerns that apparently some of you have about how your child's education is working out. Ongoing from this point, based on Act 77, do you think your concerns and your child's educational concerns will be better addressed the same, or addressed less well?
better.
This seems a little off topic.
I think it's good to have the kids have their own investment and ownership in their education. I like that idea. I don't know if you'll be able to do that specifically. It sounds like it will. But I think that's a good effort to put towards.
I really don't think it's all subject, because that's really kind of the point of doing the thing differently, trying to address the different needs.
All right, I think we're gonna be coming back to both of those topics over the next year or two. Moving on.
The behavior update piece too is an important reason I was here, so can you just explain how that got brushed over?
Yeah, it is on our agenda, but it was not, I don't know if it was a mistake or whatnot. It was not in our packet. We put it on for next month.
Okay.
So I'll take full responsibility.
And that's a
even though I-
principal report?
It'll be the same report that came last year, right? You're gonna
It'll be
give us the
Mike
same-
and,
Yeah,
Yeah, we usually do it in May, actually.
yeah. So if it was just copied wrong or something, I'll take
Okay.
responsibility for it. So you'll see it next month. So, sorry.
It's okay.
Moving on, action matters. We actually get to do something. Last day of school. So, because of snow days and whatnot, we have to go to the Monday of June 15th to get our number of school days. So that would make the last day of school June 15th and the faculty through June 17th. Do you have a motion?
I move to approve the last day of school as June 15th.
Do I have a second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody else? Anybody nay?
So Mark, can I just share then, we normally have 8th grade graduation the day before the last day of school, but because that's CVU's graduation, I'm going to recommend that we have, or ask that we have graduation on June 11th then, that Thursday.
Yeah, because that's the normal plan, right?
Right.
Yeah,
But
people
normally
plan-
it's the last day.
Yeah,
for-
no,
So,
people have planned to come for that day. I'm not
And
gonna.
the 8th graders don't come back on Monday.
Or Friday.
or Friday, but just, yeah, we normally, it's just they don't come back for one day, but,
And Elaine recommended that too at the CSSU meeting.
oh, did she? Okay.
For all the 8th grade graduations.
To be on
stay
Thursday, okay.
Is the last day a half day?
Typically,
Yes.
yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's gonna be a high absentee
Yeah.
day.
Last day is a sick day.
point?
Well, we
We have to.
have to.
By law.
We have to.
Yeah. 7.2, affirm code of conduct. We discussed this last time.
I move to affirm it.
Do I have a second? Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions?
No comment.
No comments. All right, 7.3.
I have a question, Audrey, going backwards, just out of interest. How many students have to be in school for it to count as a school day?
How many students have to be? I don't know how many students it would be. We'd have to look into that, because we did talk about that today. Who's gonna come on that Monday?
I believe it's gotta be 50%.
50%?
I'll send my
All of our kids will be there.
happily.
I will take the place of somebody.
We'll
I
check.
could
All
learn.
of your kids will be there.
I could learn some things in 6th grade, let me tell you. 7.3.
I wish Cindy were here.
Tuition.
She's coming back. She just texted me. She's in an executive session.
So I feel like this, we need some questions answered for 7.3,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
Like, we need to know if we approve the tuition waiver. I mean, we could come back to it after we do the other,
I'll text her
but,
to let her know that you.
yeah, because we need to know what is the cost and what is the precedent? Do we have to let other kids in without?
No, this is
And I know we've had this come up before, I just can't remember.
In the past, we have let children complete the year that they're in,
Yes.
But it's been hard to do the second year, right?
but I don't recall having just given them the second year.
Yeah, because I feel like then if we did, we could get penalized, like any other kid could apply, and then we have to let, yeah, we need to hear from Cindy.
I've texted her. that we
Okay,
need
so
you.
maybe we can come back.
Okay, we'll come back. So let's just do the consent agenda real quick. Putting 7.3 on hold. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved?
Do I have a second? All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Does anybody want, we'll do director's comments at the end. Let's do quick 10.0. We're going to confirm the next meeting dates. Our next regular meeting is May 19th. There will be behavior management on the agenda. June 1st, we have our annual retreat. The CSSU board meets as well on May 19th. Same thing, June 1st for the annual retreat, and there's a board chairs meeting after that.
Do we have executive session?
Yeah, a quick one, just to update on negotiations for the
Okay.
Paris. Just quick, 5 minutes. Let's do director's comments while we have time. Nope.
Actually, I have a question. Sandy, when is the next policy committee meeting?
I feel like I just took it out of my calendar. I think it's tomorrow morning at 8.
Is it really?
I think
That's
it
a good thing I
Yeah,
asked.
yeah.
Just gonna check Cindy's calendar and the location, right?
Yeah,
So you go to the right place.
CVU office, conference room.
Yeah.
I do have some information.
That's even better.
29th
8 o'clock.
of this month.
So I have 2 director's comments. The first,
That's too many.
I know. So the first is, thank you to our community for passing the budget. And as someone said to me, it's both great and scary that it only passed by 11 votes. Thank you so much to the PTO for, trying to get as many people out to vote as possible. What I feel optimistic about is what we were told about our new lead principal. Is she has done a great job in her community to really strengthen and build bridges between the community and the school. And I think we need some repair. We need to have our whole town really see Charlotte Central School as an asset worth an investment. So I feel optimistic that maybe she can help us do that, because we've kind of floundered. And the second thing, for any of you who didn't go to Peter Pan, you should have gone to Peter Pan. It was
really
the most amazing middle school production ever. The students did a great job, and it was Carl Recchia, who's the choral director here and a Charlotte resident, was the music director. His son Ben, who's a junior in high school here, was the choreographer and director. And there were a lot of Charlotte alumni who are high school students who helped with the production. It was great. It really, the kids had fun and did a great job, and the bar is set really high for next year. And I think next year a lot more kids are going to go out for the play, having seen Peter Pan. It was wonderful, including Eric's son, Evan.
Yep, that was, I think Ben should get a lot of credit for showing a lot of maturity as a director, student director.
And the sets were fantastic, and I loved like even how so many kids were involved, like over 20 kids, and it was like not even clear who was a star. Like everybody had a chance to be a star. Even the way the audience, you know, the stage was set up in the middle, it was one of the best plays I've ever been to, a school play. Like unbelievable. Blown away.
Anything else but enthusiasm?
You know, between that and the budget passing, it has been a really good week.
Eric?
Wow.
I'll second. The Peter Pan thing was great, just phenomenal. And yeah, thank you to the community for coming out to vote. And thank you for all you who showed up. Kathy Batty asked me how many people usually come to our meetings right before she gave her presentation, and I said 2. So you blew that out of the water. I encourage your friends to watch us on our ETN, remind them that the camera adds 10 pounds, and it's informative. You know, just seeing what goes on a monthly basis here, and not just during budget season, is helpful in seeing how your school runs. Back to 7.3, which is the last quick little thing. Well,
we could discuss the first part, which is the
yes.
waiver to the end of the year, because I don't think there's a financial
That's so.
issue for that.
I don't have a problem with that.
That's already accepted too.
Yeah.
Oh, they already got the
They-
approval for that?
Yeah.
Oh, they did,
Yeah.
yeah. Elaine can do that.
Elaine
Okay,
does
never
that.
mind.
Yeah. Again, this is the precedent for this. We had, what was it, 2 years ago? We had requests for a couple short-term waivers, but people who were moving into town. But this is my first experience with somebody moving out of town and wanting to stay for that final year. And I mean, I have sympathy. I understand.
I do too, and I think if we were one big school district, it'd be easy for a kid from Heinsberg to stay. But I just think we have to figure out the financial part. My
can
heart
share
really
with you
goes
that,
out.
yeah.
It was a beautifully written request by her parents, and I would love to be able to grant it if we could.
The tuition is, I don't have the exact amount, but it's about $13,000.
It's not a question of the amount, it's the question of whether it's appropriate and
Yeah.
whether it's something we've ever done. And the last time we had this request, we said no. And I'm trying to remember, I think it was before you were on the board.
I know we've had requests to pay someone's tuition in Shelburne.
We've had a number of requests, but the only one we've ever customarily granted is finishing the year that they're in.
Or starting early.
Starting.
Yeah.
And then the question I had is what is sort of the definition of a financial hardship? Because I think that's kind of what it's based on, but we don't know how you determine that for somebody. So that's the question I had.
That's a good question.
Any other audience? She's on her way.
Can I ask a question about graduation while we're,
Yes, please do.
yeah, what time's it start?
Audrey, what time does it start? Do you know off the top
I
of your head?
think dinner's at 5:30.
Dinner's, light fair's, I think 5:15 to 5, yeah, 5:45, and then it officially starts at 6 o'clock.
And then when is the carnation ceremony?
That is during Looking Ahead Day, which would be, I guess it will be on Friday, I think, or the Monday. I have to look. I think it's, it's the week of. It would
The
probably
fifth?
be that Monday, yeah. It
Oh,
would-
Monday, the
yeah,
8th? Okay.
Yeah, We'll put all those dates.
Sorry,
on the
Cindy.
website. Okay.
And you know what too, is we need to, because, award ceremony too.
Right,
You have a
that's,
job.
I know,
I
that's
know.
what I was thinking.
Yes, you
I was
need
gonna do a list of your
Yeah.
responsibilities. I'm going to do that.
I'm gonna spread it around.
Oh, you can delegate. Hi, Cindy.
Hi, thank
You know, you
you.
couldn't pick the two boards like the furthest
Yeah,
apart or
I know.
anything.
So, we are on 7.3, this is the tuition waiver request
Okay.
from,
I was thinking
The
maybe.
family.
somebody who will go unnamed. And we have a couple questions.
Otherwise.
One is, what is the tuition? If you know that.
I can figure it out.
Yeah.
Just a minute.
I thought it was 13,000.
Keep talking.
And second, Susan, what was your question?
Wait a second, we have an announced tuition.
Yes,
Yeah,
we
that's what I'm
do.
trying to find.
So, well,
We
the first question before financial hardship is, Clyde and I were thinking that there's some issue with if you grant a tuition waiver, that has bigger implications than just not making somebody pay, like,
Right.
and what is that any other person who applies, we have to let them in for free? And, or just, I can't remember what
I
those
mean,
things
you're
are.
setting up a precedent.
Yeah.
You need to be comfortable with the precedent you're setting, so there needs to be enough extenuating circumstances that you can differentiate this request from any other request you might get, if you're leaning towards it. There's also, once you've done it, one might read our policies to say you now are obligated for the rest of their career to do this, which you may or may not be in the financial position to do in future years.
Announced tuition was approved at 14,601 for next year.
Thank you. I mean, it's been pretty easy to do it to the end of the school year,
Yeah.
which is what's been done, but when you're talking about a full year, it's very rare to grant such a request.
It's
And
not
what
very
is-
rare, excuse me, we've never done it.
You might
And
not have.
Financial hardship is really not our concern. We don't have a policy that addresses allowing someone in or waiving a tuition for reasons of financial hardship. And if you're gonna do that, I mean, it may be a, heart-rending decision, but you're opening a door. And it can get to be very
Well,
expensive.
yeah, and it's not like we're tossing anybody, there's gonna be an education provider, it just won't be by us. You know, it's not.
And would we get money from the state for
No.
that student? We would not, okay. And if tuition's at 14,601, do parents lay the money down? They have to come up with the full tuition, August
I think it's
27th?
billed twice a year. I'd have to check, I'd have to verify that with Martha, but my understanding is it's done twice a year before each semester.
The last time that we did that, we never collected the tuition. And there's really no
Yeah, there's no
mechanism
recourse.
for that.
I mean, that doesn't cost more than 14,601 to go get it, right? Okay.
And it's a lot of admin time spent trying to collect something you might not see.
Further discussion?
So is it worth offering a part, I don't think we run it like a private school, but like a partial funding and they match, or, if this is something that is as important as it sounds like it is there a way we can?
I'm not aware of any board doing a partial. That doesn't mean it's not possible, I'm just not aware of it.
Do I have a motion?
I move to approve the tuition waiver request.
Do I have a second?
Wait, we're approving.
Just so we can
We have
vote
to
on
get to
it.
it.
We have to vote
Okay.
on it.
I second it.
All those in favor? All those opposed? No.
Nay.
Nay. Very reluctantly. I'm sorry to the family.
Okay. That's it.
Executive session.
Oh, yeah, we're gonna have a quick executive session. Thank you all for coming. Thank you very much.